Claire, you're on mute. Sorry.
You did that to everybody. I see that. Now I'm off mute. I am Claire. I'm going to repeat what I said. I am Claire DiNicola. And if you have attended other PIA coffee breaks, you have seen me. I've moderated quite a few discussions. If you know that, if you've come to them, you know that some of them are super casual where we maybe have a topic, but we just go wherever you want. Sometimes we put a panel together, and today we put a panel together on tech. So I'm delighted with our panelists. We'll introduce them in 1 second. Just to let, Madeline said, I've been working with PIA for a long time. Can you hear me now, everybody?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I just keep getting a message that says I'm muted. Maybe, Madeline, you're not liking what I'm saying. No? All right. I've been in the industry a long time. I was at Ivans, if many of you worked with Ivans for over 20 years, the last 8 as CEO. So this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart, this idea of tech and getting more folks using tech. And I know there are many ways you can slice and dice that. The other thing I want to say, Madeline pointed this out, I want to point it out to you all again. First of all, we love cameras, but we also know that many of you are not in a position where you can turn on a camera. But if you can turn on a camera, go ahead, because we love not talking to just a blank square. We love talking to actual faces. It also gives you the chance to join in the discussion. That's the second piece we love. We love if you join in the discussion. I know many of you will speak up and just jump in, and I will stop at periods and invite you to do that. But you can also on Zoom use this chat. This chat is a great way to just jump in. You can have a comment, you can high five somebody who's made a comment you like, or you can ask a question. We do love questions. I have a list of questions I'm going to ask this panel, but it's even better if it's your questions. So by all means, jump in and we will grab your questions and direct them. Okay, so with that, I'm going to introduce our panel and our topic. And this topic today is top challenges and opportunities in agency tech, where it's going. We're going to talk a bit about the barriers, and we're going to talk about 3 different solutions today that are things every agency should consider and take a look at. As you all know, there are vast numbers of solutions, and we have a really cool panel. They each do something different, and we have an agent representative too. So we're going to start with Jared Morgan introducing himself and his agency. Jared.
Howdy, I'm Jared Morgan. I am an agent in Paducah, Kentucky. I'm managing partner with 2 agencies. One is Paducah Insurance Agency, local home and auto and commercial. And then we also have American Church Group of Alabama, Kentucky, and Tennessee. And we're a church niche specialist and have agents that are local in the office that work as the local community folks. And then we've got agents out of the office that work out of their homes hours away that are specialists. And so we kind of play both sides of that coin and have to have good technology in place to allow for that remote work and the coordination between staff.
Great. Thank you, Jared. Jen Knight.
Hey, I got a little pop-up on unmute. Hi, I'm Jen Knight. I'm the co-founder and CTO of a company called AgentSync. We're focused on streamlining all the onboarding and compliance management. That is a very large burden in this space for agencies and agents as well as carriers. And so our core focus is really around helping folks come on, get ready to sell, and maintain kind of all the connections that are needed in terms of the paperwork, as well as the integrations to NIPR to ensure appropriate licensure, as well as appointments for everyone to be able to go out and sell and do the actual work as opposed to the license maintenance work that is a bit of a burden for, I think, probably everybody on this screen. So lovely to meet you. We're based in Denver and then have a few pockets across the US to find the folks who have the most context on all the fun edges of insurance compliance.
Excellent. Thank you, Jen. Bob Caselli. Bob, I think you might be muted.
Yes.
Okay. Happens to all of us.
Yeah. Welcome, everyone. I'm Bob Caselli. I'm the president and one of the founders of Blue Sea 802 Inc. And our solution is a software platform that organizes all of your voice communications from all of the various devices that are used to communicate agency relevant information. So with the advent of COVID, we had folks, working in multiple mixed environments, multiple, devices were used to communicate. And what was apparent was a lot of things that needed to get into the agency management system from communications using those devices wasn't happening. So our solution creates audit trails on all devices, and we provide organization to all communications, automatically embed the metadata, meaning who called who, when, at what time. We create a display of all the users' calls for the day. We tell them whether or not an activity was or was not created for that communication. And because we configured in the platform the devices that any agency staff might use, we always have that self-accountability aspect where each individual gets to see, what did I do today on calls? What was the content? Did I connect properly? Did I create the activity, etc.? There's a lot to our product, but suffice it to say that it's the starting point for the rest of our product, which gives you content analysis, etc. But automation of things that people can allow to fall through the cracks is what our core focus is, by letting people know that, hey, you had this important communication that needs to be followed up on. It didn't happen. But hopefully through the questions that we have today, we'll get a chance to expound more on how our product really makes a difference to any agency that deploys it.
Great. Thanks, Bob. And Brent Shepard.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Brent, and I'm president of Zanatech. We do agency management software, and I'm happy to say that we have released a newer system that is browser-based, which also has an API, making it a whole lot easier for us to connect to a lot of systems, including marketing and phones and everything else. We started out doing document imaging actually back in 2005 and did that for a few agencies. And then in 2005, didn't I? I meant 1995. I really don't want to admit that. That's what it is. And then in 2002, we actually started doing a more full-blown management system. So we specialize in small to medium-sized agency, and we have about 8,000 users in 44 states. So
great. Thank you, Brent. For our panel, I'm going to do what I said I wasn't going to do at first, is I'm going to have you all answer this first question because I think it's important and we want to get to know you and your solutions a little bit more. And this first question I have is, obviously you all do different things. You tackle different aspects of the customer journey. And I heard almost in all of your introductions to a fault, you're tackling specific areas. Some of you said both. So I'm curious, is growth more important when it comes to your solution? Is efficiency more important? Or is it a little bit of both? And how do you think about it? And Brent, maybe if you're okay with this, we'll start with you because you just said you introduced a new system. So like what was top of mind with that?
sure. So mobility, flexibility, device independent is really what drove a lot of the development from this. But yeah, I think growth is important. I think profitability, and I think whatever technology choices you make, you should be looking at those to say, well, is it really something I need or is it something I want? There's a lot of agents who hear things on the blogs, the conferences, whatever it may be, and it sounds cool and it's like a buzzword, but does it really work for you? That's where you got to make the decision, because not all technology works for every agency.
Jen, what's your position on this?
Yeah. I would agree, not all technology works for everyone, right? It's about the use case. I'll echo that a bit, but I'd say I think of them as interrelated. If you don't have efficient, and this is what we think a lot about in our product, if you don't have efficiency growth gets challenged, right? So efficiency throughout all workflow processes, when you start to try to grow or scale, if you have an inefficient process, that process doesn't scale. And so that's what we actually, originally with our product, we're looking primarily at compliance workflows and realized that there was a ton of business opportunity around that to create better experiences around onboarding, which facilitated larger growth. And that scaled growth came from the efficiencies that our customers could see with their agents and with their kind of overall partnership. So I think they're really intertwined. Right now maybe is not a moment where everyone's focusing on the growth. Some folks on this call may be in a bit of a growth mode, and some may be thinking about how to create efficiencies in the business. I think it's a great moment to think about what to do now in the next 12, 18, potentially 24 months to allow for a really great growth experience on the other side, and technology can support that. So I think of them as really interrelated, and there should be a focus on both because it is a scale question.
And we saw some votes, I think, in the chat for both that, for growth, as well as for this idea of a combination. Bob, you know what? I thought of this question when I was first meeting with you guys, because I had learned about your solution as an E&O play, right? And then you told me, yeah, but it can be used for growth in this respect. So would love to hear from you on this.
Yeah, this is an exciting thing. In fact, we recently did a case study with one of our major customers. They have over 300 offices. Now, our solution is totally scalable. So we have many, family businesses, 2-3 people, right up to, 6,000 staff in these large organizations. But let me just choose one of the Blue Butler features that we had discovery on, if you will, when we did this case study. We thought our audio signature feature, which allows every call to be properly documented because of the audit trails and the security that are in the system. And so we worked with Economical Mutual, which is one of the largest carriers in Canada, to introduce the concept of we'll call them voice signatures because that's what our customers call them. We introduced the concept as audio signatures, but the idea is to take an acceptance, a legally binding acceptance on the phone. And we have an automated script, and people that don't have their computer in front of them can use, they learn the script. It's very basic. I won't take the time to go into it now, but just the magic words that accept or properly bind an audio or voice signature. And we thought this was an efficiency tool where, people that don't have e-signature technology, or they're not in a position to give a written signature, it's efficient if you can just have them, do you accept the terms that we just discussed? Yes, click an audio signature button. What we found out in our case study, though, in addition to all of that efficiency, this firm broke all of their sales records as a result of being able to get the business off the street while they had that person, understanding the issues, ready to buy, etc. Things happen when you have time intervene. Time is often, for any industry that's in the service or sales business, time is a factor that can work against you. And if you can take care of business while all the parties are ready to do it, obviously. So we weren't totally surprised that they broke all of their sales records, but that wasn't why we introduced the feature. So I'll just pause there, give others a chance to think about that and discuss other aspects of it. There's a lot more to the Blue Butler solution other than that, but yeah, convenience, efficiency and growth really are intertwined.
I like that story because it's kind of like sometimes something that's efficient can turn into being a huge growth driver for the agency. So it's a real deal. All right, Jared, give us the final word. You're looking at new technology. How are you looking at it? And you can even draw back on your own experiences of when you've implemented something.
So we all know staffing is a challenge right now. And anytime we can swap or reduce hours with an outsourced technology tool, it is a huge advantage. And that's been part of our ability to scale up in that discussion is having, most agents, when they start their career, if they start an agency, they write a bunch of business first and it's a mess. And then they got to figure out the workflow after the fact. And for whatever reason, it probably cost me a lot of money, but we figured out the workflow as much as we could in advance and then scaled it up, and it's been a much more efficient way to grow than the other way around. But now we look for ways to reduce hours. Honestly, if I can save hours with a tool, it's worth its weight in gold for us.
Great. And I think that's a really good answer. So we do have a question in the chat. I'm going to throw it out to the panel and you guys answer it how you answer it. They're interested in the costs of the solutions. Do you guys, when you go in and you're talking to an agency, is there a way you give a range or discuss this topic? I'm going to let my panelists jump in as they see fit. Anybody want to go first? Any hands? Nobody wants to discuss the cost. Jen's gonna.
Why not? Always a fun question. So we think about a cost for us as a per agent per month who's active on the platform. And part of that is because a core part of our offering is around real-time daily NIPR data that is then assessed and kicked into workflows that help understand whether or not an agent can continue to sell or something needs to happen around that. So we call it kind of real-time eligibility and that monitoring. People's channels change, right? People join the organization, people leave. And so we look at it as who is active in the platform per month. And that pricing per agent ranges, as you might imagine, a bit based on the features that you have turned on, as well as the scale of the channels. So someone who has 6,000 agents and someone who has 50 are going to have different tiers of pricing. But that's our kind of base philosophy around that.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else want to jump in?
From the Blue Sea side, the typical scenario is $11 per month per user. So it's based on a per user. And right now, we think all of our features are really critical to agencies in terms of, protecting E&O, knowing that activities have always been created, automating processes that expose the firm to, concerns. So we don't like to say, well, if you get this feature, it's $2 a month, that feature is $3 a month, etc. Because everything works together. It's a database. It's a real-time capability to guide the best practices and phone calls. It works in the background to get all of the information, the recording, etc., automated and put into your AMS without you having to do anything, etc. So we price it at $11 per month to make it affordable to everybody. Obviously, when you have a large firm, you're going to give volume discounts, that sort of thing. Now we are coming out with some extremely exciting, powerful features based on Chat GPT. It's just amazing stuff. We're announcing it at AppliedNet. We are going to separately price that because then you're getting into data lake management things. And I'm so excited about how agencies can better manage their firm with a view. If they look at, phone calls rather than, hey, there's something I got to follow up on. You're building a data lake there. And I don't want to get into that today, but data is so important to having a big picture look at what your firm is doing. But if you don't have the control in place to be able to know you've got valid data, you're not going to be able to make good decisions. So our platform is about pulling all of that in. So when you get into kind of the big picture, little picture scenarios, it's important that you look at costs because you cannot separate out certain core things that are necessary for one end result. And, so if the person doesn't have the budget for that, you don't want to lose that person because they lose all of the other capabilities. So, we've been able to keep the price in line, but like I say, when we get to the Chat GPT features, but the value is so prevalent that we're not too concerned about people saying, because it pays for itself right away. And that's important. But anyway, hopefully I haven't confused people on the price, but right now it's totally manageable and it will be, but it's just going to be very more selective in terms of high-end data analytics that you're going to be able to get with our solution.
Thanks, Bob. No, I think you haven't confused people. And there's been a discussion also while you're talking going on in the chat about sort of actual, pay costs versus all the subliminal costs, right? And then there's the opportunity cost of not doing something and what you might be paying. So that all factors in, right? There is
Claire,
yep, go ahead.
I'd like to jump in on this because I was reading that question as well. So our system starts at $349 for a single user and $90 a month. A 5-user system is $350 a month and about $700 to start up. But I think the second part of the question is dollars and cents and time to implement the resource, right?
Right.
And I think that is going to be different for every agency. But I would also say that probably every agency underestimates the time they need to implement the resource. Often they buy it and they just want to get it in and get it working as fast as possible, right? Because every time is money and we're all busy and all that stuff. But if you spend the time to implement properly, do the training, do the things you need to learn the system up front, it's actually going to save you more money in the back end. So the more time you spend training, the more money you're really going to save.
Yep. Jared, how do you guys look at cost? Because you actually were the first one to bring it up, right? And you said, talent's an issue. So talk to us about how you look at it.
So the balancing act of, I just think about hiring a new support staff account manager for our agency. It's going to take time away from the existing staff to train them. And really, whether you're hiring or whether you're implementing a software technology, you're going to get less efficient before you catch up and see those cost savings. So it's really, it's really there's always pain involved. And I've said to multiple other friends in the business that I'll never be responsible for encouraging them to change management systems because of the pain they got to endure to do so. But if you don't implement well, it will cost you way more than if you do it properly. Even if you hire additional staff and do it properly on the front end, the efficiency is gained quicker. And I've said multiple times, if we ever go to another management system change, which I'm pleased with ours, but we'd probably hire additional instead of having the automatic conversion. The data is just not as reliable in the conversion as it would be for somebody entering it correctly, and then the efficiency you gain from having it up and running from day one. So poor implementation is probably y'all all selling the services could probably say that's the biggest threat to effective sales as anything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you guys have kind of led into a question that we had, which was, two things. One thing I want to say, there's a program that PIA Partnership has done called Winning at Virtual, which takes a bunch of different technologies. Some of the technologies we're talking about today are in there. Some we're going to be adding. We constantly evolve that program. But there's a section of it called ROI. And it has a model, and it's free to all PIA members. You can just go in and grab this, and you can and I think Madeline probably just put it in the chat, or will. You just go in and you can plug in your own, like, how many staff do I have, this and that, and it'll spit out a model. Now, every agency is different, and you may have to finesse it a little bit, but it can give you a starting point if you're thinking about implementing something new. It's a good way to look at it and start to think about not only those hard costs, but all the soft costs associated with it. All right, but the other thing we were leading into is PIA they do this every year. It comes out in the early part of the year. They do a survey with National Underwriter, and they did one in 2023. And they asked agencies, what are the biggest barriers to implementing new technologies? And cost was not one of the top barriers. The top barriers were insufficient training and staffing, and I guess this is a version of cost, but no clear ROI, but not a hard cost. So I guess I'll throw that out to the panel. Are these the barriers you guys are hearing? How do you overcome them? How do you think agents can overcome these challenges? And then for those in the chat, weigh in. If you disagree with these barriers, if you have other barriers, or you have a more specific example, we'd love to hear from you too. So let's see, who wants to talk first? Bob, you want to talk first? Okay.
Yeah, certainly with our product, we focus very much on making sure that the agency gets maximum value from their acquisition. And that means you need, because it is new technology, things like voicemail and call recording and just the phone service. People understand those technologies, but what Blue Sea does is we manage voice communications, and that, to a lot of people can mean so many different things. So it's important that we first of all, understand what the goals of the agency are. Is it growth? Is it protection against errors and emissions? Is it, bottom line? Do I want to retire? What are my issues? So we want to have that high level understanding first. But to maximize a solution like Blue Butler, what we need is a willingness to accept new technology, because when you're on your mobile device and you get back to your office and you've got that recording already loaded in your EMS, that's pretty awesome stuff, but it's not out there. People don't know about it. So how do we make that happen, sort of thing? And they get concerned about, well, the cost of ownership, the IT infrastructure I'm going to need is going to be overwhelming, etc. Answer, no. So you got to just open up and listen to what your vendor is telling you. But one of the pillars of a successful new technology implementation is have a champion or champions. So in our sales process, we always want to understand, is our agency understanding the value points first? Because if you don't have the decision makers understand the core value, nothing is going to go well then. So from thereafter. So you got to make sure that you've communicated your value, what's required first, and then speak with that agent. And we typically speak to the agency C-level if it's a large organization, or owners, president, founder of the agency, etc. So because we have an impactful solution that is going to change, in a major way how that firm can succeed. So we know it's going to be executive level, this, input. Now, having that said, you need people throughout the organization to adopt the technology. And that means you need to speak with the owners, or the first people that are going to be responsible for implementing this, to understand they have an important role, a very important role, and that is to identify and encourage these champions to be aware of how everyone else in the organization is accepting or adopting it. And when you see people that don't get it, they're going to need some help. It's not going to come from inside themselves. You need somebody else to say, oh, do you know why this feature is important, sort of thing. So again, one of the fundamentals of a successful implementation is make sure the users understand what's in it for them, what's good about that for them. And so we tend to gamify, because you can't get people instantly from position A in terms of their knowledge and their comfort level to position B, where, or I should reverse it, B first, then A, they're where you want them to be. So you don't get them there right away. It's a process. And so we use a concept of gamification. So one of the things our solution does is it allows call content to be incorporated in a call record. So you look in your EMS, you see you had a call, 20 calls today, you want to find the one with the adjuster. Well, it's tagged as an adjuster call, or it might have been a lead referral. It's the call record itself has a text in it that says this is an upsell or a cross sell that needs to be followed up on, sort of thing. So, our system provides this information. And so if you let a salesperson know that's on commission, make sure you're tagging your calls, and it's just a click on the screen. So the agency gets to pick what are the important business factors we want to track. So our leads, cross sells, upsells, cancellations, are these kinds of things important to you to know about? If they are, then create a tag for it. Click the tag, it's there. So you see the value then of telling a salesperson, with Blue Butler, if you tag the call, you get to it right away, you follow up on it right away, your chances of getting the commission on that are way higher than if you don't have a system that's categorizing and organizing your calls, etc. So very important that you explain the value of the feature. And the gamification is, if our department attains 80% accurate tagging for the first month, we're going to have a pizza party. So there's a victory lunch. So you bring these concepts of rewarding for people paying attention, learning. But like I say, that, a free slice of pizza isn't going to get people to necessarily change but you make it fun. And it's to get through this process of learning quickly how to get the most out of your technology. And the champions are also there to help, people realize, hey, we all benefit when we embrace this technology. in terms of, the bosses are happy because we're doing what we need to do. And, we're hitting our corporate goals. I have secure employment. I'm doing well personally. So you take these approaches with technology to let people realize it's your friend if you open up to it. And that's the approach I think that people need to take.
Great. Thanks, Bob. Jen, you've talked about your solution really removes a big headache, and it sounds like you've kind of solving with technology a problem, kind of creating a new category, a little bit of a no-brainer. So what kind of objections, like, what do you think about these objections? Are they other objections? Is it education? What has to occur for people to do it, embrace what you do?
Yeah, I'd echo. I think I loved at the very beginning when Brent kind of talked about being really thoughtful about why you're selecting a technology. And I think that adds on to what Bob was just saying about who is the champion in the organization. I think just with any technology, our technology, we see it, but kind of any technology. And my career prior was not in the insurance space, and this was true everywhere I worked before this, right? Is what problem are we solving? How is this technology actually going to move it forward? What's our success criteria? And a thing that I've thought a lot about in my career, and we appreciate with our customers, is there's going to be a moment of sub-optimization. Or a perceived moment of sub-optimization, right? You are doing a process today. It feels like it's working. Maybe it's not the one you want for scale, but at least you know that process. And now we're going to have to move to a new process. And setting those boundaries together at the beginning and saying, this is what an implementation is going to look like. Here's our success criteria. Here's how we think about it in phases together so that we can start to get value quickly. Also, maybe take big hurdles like integrations later on, if that's the big hurdle in there, and make sure that everyone's understanding that journey, both from a technical and then a functional perspective of what you were saying, Bob, of making sure the team on the ground, really knows what the North Star is. What are we trying to do? What are we trying to move the needle on? And how do we have that partnership with a vendor? There's a kind of philosophy of, are you a vendor? Are you a partner? We believe in partnerships with our customers. Our customers who've been with us for several years, we've gone through multiple phases. We've continued to extend value because we sit down with them and think about the problems they're trying to solve. So all of this resonates, right? This is do we have the right problem we're trying to solve together? Do we understand the change management impact for the team? Are the right folks standing up with that team, hearing what's working and hearing what's not working, and then making sure we're doing quick revs on that? But I think any technology that sells it to you as like quick plug and play, you just have to be a little bit careful about in this space, because there is always that change management component to see it come to life. And we've done very, very quick implementations for folks, but they've always signed up for, hey, I understand how I'm going to bring this into my organization. The other thing I think about here, and this is kind of across the board, is when you look at that partner, it's not just the technology. What does the support look like? What does their maybe delivery or implementation organization look like? How are you going to get the product off the ground? How are you going to keep it alive? How are you going to be supported on an ongoing basis? Technology, especially technology, right? We're all technology in the cloud as well, is constantly evolving. There's going to be new releases. There's going to be changes. How is the vendor partner supporting you and socializing that with your organization so you can continue to see more value and things can continue to improve? So those are the things that we think a lot about here, and we've invested in over time of appreciating that it's not enough to just hand a team of technology, right? And the technology that we're doing is very much an apples to oranges. The way that you handle onboarding when you're manually looking up data from the Department of Insurance, or you're manually pulling data from NIPR, is fundamentally different than how you run that process when that data is live every single day in your instance. Your instance is in the cloud, accessible anywhere, and that data is accessible anywhere. So we help people kind of take that journey, and we have teams that are designed around taking that journey because we appreciate that that's the biggest hurdle. So I'll just echo kind of what was said before and reemphasize that it's all about change management and the willingness to sign up for that. But the other side of that, is a higher productivity, higher efficiency, better outcomes. There's always just that middle ground as you're going through it that everyone has to navigate.
Yep. Great. And actually, so let's build on what you just said. And for Brent and Jared, talk to me about training. How important is it to have that back end side that, as Jen said, you're not just leaving the technology at the door or signing up for a seat or whatever it is. So maybe Brent, you go first, and then we'll hear from Jared. You're muted. Brent, you're muted.
Okay, there we go.
Here you
Um,
go. It
so-
looked good, though. Say it
Hey.
again.
So your on the PIA report, I was very curious about the insufficient training because if any of the agents would be willing to type in why that's a problem, I would love to know because in choosing one of the systems of any of us, right? It's like training should be provided. Now I know some vendors do charge for more training, but for us, example, it's included in our monthly fee and it's ongoing and it doesn't matter how much you use. So I'm also curious maybe if that question was answered by staff because maybe the principals are not giving their staff enough time to train on new products. We've went from one version to the next version, and I've literally heard people two answers on whether or not they like the new system. They hate it or they love it. The ones who love it are doing the training. The ones who not are usually not doing the training. They expect it to perform and do everything the old system did. But part of that problem is that principals aren't giving their staff time during the day to work on new products and learn them. And it doesn't matter if it's your management system or your carrier software, there's probably tons of features in all those that are not being used.
Mhm.
Yeah, I just would say, as an agency owner, when you scale up and grow, I'm looking at the book of business size my staff can handle. And in a hard market environment that we're in right now, if you're judging that based on premium versus account number, it's almost moving faster than we can keep up with to hire, if that makes sense. I don't know if others have found themselves in that spot. So now you're in a place where before you can even go through a reasonable hire process and get somebody onboarded, the work that's coming in, at least in our experience, is so much that we're struggling to keep up with the workload, much less train somebody. So that's been our unique challenge right now and in this environment. And we've always been a growth agency, but it's just crazy how it's going right now. The other part of that is I've talked to so many agents that are like, man, that training is expensive, or my staff's really good, they can figure it out. We're just going to or my staff will say, we don't need to do the training. We're too busy. We just want to get in there and we'll figure it out. And it's like, no, we've actually got to take some time and set aside, but it's really to be profitable, there's a certain statistics you're going to have to hit as an agency owner, but those, with the market moving as quickly as it is, those get blown up and the workload grows too fast for us to effectively onboard the next person. And that we're not huge, so we don't have excess capacity, and I don't know how many agencies can without being very large and stay profitable. So that's the juggling act that we're doing as owners. So yeah, I don't know that I have a great solution other than that you've got to set some time apart and take the time to do the training, even though that means for my staff, that means they're not doing work and they're groaning because they know that they've got tasks piling up behind them to catch up on once they get done with it.
Mhm. So it's a hard thing to do, but you have to invest in it. And Jared, you mentioned a couple of times that you've looked at technology that if you didn't have it, you couldn't afford to do what you're doing with, more people. You wouldn't even be able to get the people, right? So you really are looking at it like this is critical to our existence.
Productivity for us, productivity is huge, and we're looking at that. What's the average book of business size? And we do personal lines and we do churches. Churches require much less servicing activity than personal lines. So it's how do you judge our staff and how much work they're doing but I'll throw one thing out that we've done, which is we went to eDoc download from our primary carriers. And then we started using an outside vendor to print and mail our policies instead of managing them, printing them in the office ourselves if we had to, or managing in the office and binding them and mailing them. And that saved us like a ton of time. It probably saved us 7 or 8 hours a month, which that may not sound like a lot, but I'm paying my staff the 7 and 8 hours I'm getting back from them is more savings than the outsourced vendor ended up costing me. And they can print it cheaper than we can, they can mail it cheaper than we can. And so that's just one example of I'd rather enhance productivity and outsource that piece of it, because it allows my staff to do more. And then now I'm looking at my premium per account manager and it's going up. than I would try to do that in-house less efficiently and save some money, if you will.
Mhm. And I know from talking to you in the past, you do a lot of analysis that way. Can I ask you that idea? Did you guys generate that, or was that a vendor who approached you and said, let us take that off your hands?
When one of our main church carriers came and said, you can either let us deliver to your customer electronically, or you can do it. But if you do it, we're not going to mail you any more paper policies. So then that printing cost came to us. At that point, I was
Okay.
like, ooh, we're going to have to figure that out, because we've never gone the big printer in our office, because we just didn't need it. We've done a lot. We've gone like, paperless, and we basically print proposals. That's about it. And so when that came to us, I spent a lot of time looking for a vendor that could print and mail. And so that was a fun process, and we found one that worked really well for us.
Great. So it's kind of a grouping of things that occurred, right? So Shah just put an interesting comment in here about training. I'm just going to read it to you guys and see if anybody wants to comment. Training, especially software training, is a double-edged sword. It's like the owner's manual for your car. I'll flip through it for 30 seconds, then I'm going to try to figure it out on my own. Then I'm going to get frustrated when I don't know how the thing works. Brent, what do you think? You would probably agree with that, right? You have to invest in actual training. Are you muted? Yes. You're muted again. Something happened to Brent. He's muted again. Oh, they can't unmute. Madeline, can you do something?
There we go. Yeah, it's not allowing us to unmute. So,
It's the Zoom thing. I don't know.
so I love what Shaw said. I smiled the first time I read it, because it is so true. And I think we all do that in everything, right? Because we just want to get it done and learn it. It's hilarious, but it's really true. And the problem is, when you get frustrated, can you call someone? How much time does it take to get to someone? Those are all things that you have to, calculate in that training process. But if you'll spend the time up front a little more, I think that frustration is a lot less on the back end of things. So, I'm a huge advocate of spending the time needed to train. I'm a tech company, and I actually let my people, I kind of get upset when they don't learn new things, because how are they doing their job properly if they're not using things properly? So.
I'll jump in there. We've done a handful of revs on our training as well. And I think this is something about partners, right? When you say it's like the owner's manual for your car, then my heart stops. I'm like, that's training that should be updated into a more learning system, or something that's a little bit more engaging or easy to navigate. We all have them. We all have the PDFs of all the training, but something that we've invested in is actually having trainers and educators in our staff who build training content that is designed for that quick lookup, that easy accessibility, as well as some programs and processes you can go through. So you can, as a team, and we have people do it, join a community, get the training, compete with each other, learn together, and kind of reinforce that training. So it's a little bit too about, there's a lot that's evolved in the training space. I think people are appreciating that just a document that we all have to read and try to navigate when we hit a hard edge isn't the way most of us learn, or most of us actually want to engage in a system. So I think that's also something to contemplate as you think about training, right? None of us like to write documentation. Few of us like to read documentation. What is coming along with this from your partner? Does it feel like it's an appropriate match for your staff? Are they able to iterate on that to make it a better match and make it more real time or more engaging? Because it's true. I loved what you said, because it's exactly what we all do. You look at the doc, you're like, this is 72 pages. I will read about 4 of them, and then I gotta go, right? And there's a lot out there that folks can be, and I think should be doing for this space to help that be a more integrated and interactive process.
Great. Here's an interesting comment from Robert Stoltman. So I'd like to read it, because it's a little bit chicken and egg, right? Unfortunately, software rarely can be trained to do things like the agency does them. Instead, the agency has to be the one to change how they're doing it to use the software. So that's an interesting thing. What's everybody's point of view on that? maybe it's somewhere in the middle, right? Anybody want to comment? First?
I'll start just because I'll say, like, anyone who looks at my background knows that I was not an active agent or staff member, but the first person we hired at our company was actually someone who had 30 years of experience in this space to ensure that we were writing programs and processes from the perspective of the end user. And so I think that's, for you to think about for any given vendor, is, are they actually aware of the pains and challenges of your team? How flexible is the software? I think for us, we're built on the salesforce.com platform in the cloud. It gives us a lot of flexibility to move the solution around in the way that our end customers need. And what I've appreciated in my 5 years in this space is that everybody does it a little bit differently. And great partners, and we partner with a bunch of other tech companies in this space. They're doing it well to acknowledge that and think about the capabilities that they're trying to support, and then how can they make a technology, make those capabilities accessible in whatever workflow works best for their customer. So super opinionated, very strong, structured workflows tend not to work. We have a few of them related to like submitting data to NIPR. There is a requirement from the state. And in that case, we have to ask you all of those questions. Otherwise, your application will get rejected. But outside of that, if you want to do it A, B, C, D, E, you want to do it D, E, F, G, you want to do things in parallel, serially, that's a lot of the flexibility that modern platform technologies, and Bob, you're talking about yours as a platform, allow you to do. And so I think that investment in future technology, when you're looking at those technology partners, looking for a partner who is flexible, who is data-driven, API-driven, in the cloud, allows you to get a little bit away from that. But I think it's a huge flag. If you don't have that, you don't see yourself or see your voice or see your experience in the software, it's probably not going to be a good fit, because it's going to be way too much change management and not in the good change management way.
Jared, how have you worked with vendors? Have you found that they see your perspective as an agent or have it?
It varies. And I do want to make one comment on training. We spent a lot of time and effort on developing workflow videos, and we've got a private YouTube channel that's got all of our training videos, and those were somewhat helpful. Nothing for our experience replaces a person sitting next to another person at a desk and going through the training with a trainer. We just weren't able to get away from that. And so that for us, that's it. Vendor wise, man. So it's tough. Some tools we use, I think, Claire, this may be an additional topic, but we've gone away from one platform to solve all problems to using whatever tool best fits. And even if that means additional duplication of data entry, our staff is so fast at data entry that they can get the data in there quickly. And if things don't sync their API, that's not the end of the world. I think agencies as an industry, we got fascinated with this idea that we want to enter the data once and we don't ever want to do it again. And we try to find solutions that accommodate that. And most of them are poor at most of the areas that they do. And maybe at one piece, they're really good. So we broke that probably 10 years ago and said, we're finding the best tool for each piece, even if it doesn't integrate, and we can just repeat the data. And then the key to that is making sure you know what data needs to be saved. And there's a ton of data that agencies, and I mean, you're looking at a court app, just as an example. Part of knowing how to be a good agent is knowing what part of the Accord app needs to be completed and what can be completely ignored. And so that was one of the pieces for us, was just that data strategy to say, once you simplify it down to we only need this, then train everybody on that, then that simplifies everything. And that was one of our pieces. But we train our people in next to each other or with a live trainer if it's remote. And we use the best tool for the job, and then it all goes back to what information you're supposed to be capturing.
That's very interesting. That's a very interesting strategy. Somebody was going to jump in?
Yeah, I was just going to jump in. As a software developer, it is extremely difficult to develop a piece of software that fits everyone. And when I say that, if I go in 100 different agencies, there may be 100 different ways to do the same process. So hopefully the software is maybe flexible enough that it might be done in several ways that it will fit your need. But to give you an example of how difficult it is, we have agents in fact, I was just working on a focus group on Friday, putting a new one together for some stuff we're doing. And we have some agents that have wonderful ideas and they're really good, right? That's how our software changes, that's why we upgrade. But we have agents also call and tell us how bad they need a particular function that really is only going to work for that one single agency because it makes no sense to everybody else down the line. So we have to politely say, thanks, but no thanks. We have to, so as a developer, we get a lot of information, but we have to figure out what the agencies need as a whole, not just an individual. So sometimes individuals do need to change some of the ways they do workflows.
Mhm. Bob, do you want to weigh in on this change management topic and the idea of meeting the
Yeah.
agent in the middle or where they are?
Yeah, I think it's about communication. It's about the vendor that should know their product better than what the user would know it, but the user knows what they need to get done in a given workflow better than the vendor does. So you start with that understanding and you communicate so that there is flexibility in most software. The problem is the software developer doesn't know all of the nuances of how the user wants to use it. So it's important that the distributor or the vendor of the software really does take the time to understand what are the workflow objectives and what are the various options available to do it. Once you understand that, you can bridge the gap in knowledge. Hey, I know this feature does these three things. And now that I've asked the question, how do you like to do it? I can marry up those things that I might not otherwise brought to the attention of the vendor, but because the customer, but because I've communicated, we can bridge that gap. So there is that dialogue there. And it's not just in the selling process, it's in the implementation process, it's in the support process. So you just remember what the relative understandings are of the parties, of the user and of the manufacturer of the software. And that's a constant, not just on day one of the sale, but right through to support as they use it.
Great.
Yeah,
So go ahead.
Can I hop in and just say, as agents, most of us are morons. And we go to the
Speak for yourself, Jared.
me too. We go to the providers and we're like, you need to tell us how to do this. And a lot of agencies don't understand what they need. And they put that on the software provider, and the software provider is a software provider, not an agency. And so figuring out what we actually need, you can make different platforms do what you need them to if you understand what you need to get out of them. And I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges for us as agents.
I think that's a good point. Communication's in the eye of the beholder, right? And you really need to. So what Brent was talking about, working with focus groups and getting feedback on things, that's kind of a good thing. So we've covered a lot of green flags and red flags for vendors, which I think has been great in this talk. And hopefully, and I like the discussion. We've gotten some commentary and some questions. Let's close it with sort of switching gears, but it's not totally, because you brought it up a number of times, Jared, a number of people, this connection between an agency that's technically proficient and whatever that looks like for the agency, and being able to sort of attract talent, particularly attract maybe the next generation to insurance. So this is one of those big or strategic questions I teased at the beginning. How important, or do you think that is? How should agencies be thinking about that? Is it a big deal? Is it more get the business out the door and worry about that later? I don't know. Jared, you want to address that? And then I'll kind of run through the.
Yeah, I will say we definitely, I've made this comment in the past, but we interviewed a potential summer intern who chose to go to the local bank instead of us. A lot of our staff, and I'm included in this, my staff used to be offended until I explained that I was in the same boat, but most people don't go to college and say, I'm going to be an insurance agent. Most people don't graduate from college and say, I'm going to be an insurance agent. This tends to be the industry where you end up after doing something else first and it not working out. And so for us, we're not even at the agency level, we're not even most appealing to those that are right out of college. We interviewed a girl that I went to church with that got a journalism degree and is working for the local paper. And when she graduated from college, and it was like, she's still chasing the journalism dream. She may, at this point in her life, she's still the possibility of working in Nashville or another bigger area is not been destroyed in her dreams. Once those dreams get popped, I'll probably call her and say, hey, you can make a good living working for us. Right now, it's not happening. So that's part of our struggle, is that we're not the sexy option, and that it takes a certain amount of timing, at least in our experience, before somebody's open to come to work for us. That tends to be late 20s, early 30s, or people that don't necessarily go to college, which is great. We've got both producers and account managers that make great money that don't have college degrees, but you gotta have a way of evaluating them and finding them and making sure they've got the talent for the job.
So you know your market. Jen, how much do you think there's a link between, using more tech and attracting folks?
Yeah, I would say it's probably more about retention. I mean, there's tech in attracting folks, but more about retention. And I really loved what you said, Jared, about what did you focus on and how do you think about ROI? So tech, there's appeal of all these APIs, but if that's not what's going to impact your teams day in and day out, if it's actually sending printing off to a partner and folks can optimize their workflows in other ways, that's great. And so I think about that even for us, which is not an insurance agency, but how are we responding to the needs of the folks on the floor when they highlight a need or a gap in their workflow that could be augmented with technology? Are we open to that? Are we supporting them in that? Are we making their day-to-day more efficient, which is a retention play about how are you as an employer using my time and how are you supporting me and using my time most effectively to do my job? And so I think agencies and businesses generally who think about that a lot, invest in that and support their workforces in iterating through things and bringing new processes, new technology into the stack or into their day-to-day, and are willing to do that experimentation, are going to have a better time retaining that next generation of talent. And then with retention, referrals, attraction, and those other things kind of come. I think it's hard on the outside potentially coming in to say, if you've never worked in insurance, like, I am a better agency than this other agency you have no context on because you've never seen their internal processes. So I'd look at it as more as a retention, but I think it's a really key part of a retention play of responding to your workforce's needs, and then a workforce who has expectations around technology as part of their workflow.
It's a whole mindset. Bob, how about you?
Yeah, I think technology is huge in terms of retaining and attracting new talent. But one of the things that we've been thinking a lot about since our foray into artificial intelligence is, okay, this is going to save a lot of time when we automate the summary of all phone calls and automatically put that summary into the AMS, so you don't have to spend that administrative time. The question is, now that you've saved all of this time, and we've done some preliminary numbers and we're busy working with customers to get some hard numbers on how much time is saved, but it's very apparent that one of the key things is, to ask the agency, what are you going to do with your saved time? So it might not be that you save 100% of somebody's time so that you don't need to have that person on your payroll anymore, but you might save 2 hours a day or 2 hours a week or whatever the particular capability is saving you. The question is have you thought about what you're going to do with that new time on your hands? And so if you're really going to seize the benefit of technology, you need to say, well, I'm doing this because it's efficient, it's going to save time. But if people are going to just spend more time at the water cooler and not actually doing something positive, have you really saved anything? So that needs to be part of your thinking, because this is serious technology that seriously saves time. What are you going to do with that new time?
Great. Brent, take us home. Good. Oh, he's muted again. What happened?
There we go. So
Brent's not doing it. The system's doing it.
Yeah. So I've said this before. I said, if you want to attract young talent, they don't want technology. They expect technology. They expect things to be working. And I just saw a comment that says it needs to be developed around an agent. Well, and I think Jared said earlier, there isn't one system that does everything well. You're going to need to maybe fit pieces together to get the solution you really want. And that could be in many different ways, maybe a few, but maybe many. I won't say that some of us are old, but the millennials have never known a world or don't know what a CD-ROM is. So if you have to think about the people you're trying to hire, and if you're still using a CD-ROM, you got to look at the new technology and what is available. So I know that's hard, and it's even hard for me. I'm a technology guy, but I spend a lot of time trying to keep up with my kids and their phones and everything. So it's a lot of work at the same time to stay up on technology.
Great. Well, I know we've run out of time. I appreciate those who stayed a couple minutes past the coffee break. This has been a fantastic discussion. I really want to thank our panelists for participating, and thank you to all the agencies who attended, especially all the comments we got. So really appreciate it. It's a discussion. Stay tuned. There's more, right? It's for another day. We brought up a lot of other topics. So thanks again, everybody. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.